I don't know how to explain this, but I think my house is alive. Not in the way you're imagining. No creaking floorboards or walls that bleed. It's subtle. So subtle, in fact, that for years I thought it was just me losing my mind. But now I'm not so sure. The first time I noticed something was off, I was 8 years old. My parents had gone out for dinner, leaving me with a babysitter who fell asleep on the couch watching TV. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling when the room seemed different. The shadows weren't where they were supposed to be. They shifted, not like they do when light moves, but as if they were moving on their own, like they were breathing. I told myself it was nothing. Kids imagine things all the time, right? But then there were the whispers, barely audible, like someone speaking through layers of fabric. I could never make out what they said, but they always came from events. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized we didn't have any windows open. Fast forward 15 years. I'm an adult now, living alone in the same house. My parents moved out after my dad started sleepwalking into the basement every night. He wouldn't remember doing it. Just wake up downstairs surrounded by tools he swore he hadn't touched. One day, he packed his bags and left without explanation. Mom followed soon after, saying she couldn't shake the feeling that the house didn't want us anymore. They sold it to me for $1. $1. You'd think I'd have seen that as a red flag, but I didn't. I love this place. It felt like home, even though sometimes, late at night, I'd hear those whispers again. Then came the dreams. They started innocently enough. In them, I'd wander the halls of the house, exploring rooms I didn't recognize. Some were beautiful, a library filled with books I couldn't read, a sunroom drenched in golden light. Others were terrifying. There was a door in the basement I'd never seen before, rusted shut and pulsing faintly, like it had a heartbeat. Every time I reached for it, I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Work was hectic, life was messy, but then the dreams began spilling into reality. Objects would move overnight. A chair left at the kitchen table would end up pushed against the wall. Drawings I didn't remember making appeared on scraps of paper scattered around the house. Always the same thing. Spirals. Perfect, endless spirals. And then there was the smell. It wasn't constant, but when it happened, it was overwhelming. Smoky, metallic, like burnt copper. It clung to everything, even though I couldn't find its source. Once, I woke up to find my hands blackened with ash, though I hadn't been near fire. That's when I decided to investigate. The basement had always given me the creeps, but now it felt worse. Oppressive, like the air itself was heavier down there. I grabbed a flashlight and descended the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. When I reached the bottom, I froze. The door from my dreams was real. Rust streaked its surface, and faint vibrations traveled up my arm when I touched it. I tried to turn the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, I slammed my palm against it. And that's when I heard her voice. "Don't," she whispered. I spun around, heart pounding. No one was there. Just the empty basement, the stale air, and the sound of my own breathing. But then she spoke again, louder this time. "You'll regret it." Her tone wasn't threatening. It was pleading. Desperate, almost. I backed away, stumbling over boxes stacked haphazardly against the wall. By the time I made it upstairs, I was shaking so badly I could barely lock the basement door behind me. For weeks, I avoided going down there. I told myself it was paranoia, that I needed to get a grip. But the dreams kept coming, more vivid than ever. And the whispers, they grew louder, clearer, until one night, I finally understood what they were saying. "Let me out." Every vent, every corner of the house echoed with that single phrase. Over and over again. "Let me out. Let me out. Let me out." I couldn't take it anymore. Whatever was trapped in my house wanted freedom, and it was willing to drive me insane to get it. Against every instinct screaming inside me, I went back to the basement. This time, the door opened easily, as if it had been waiting for me. What I saw on the other side changed everything. The room beyond the door wasn't part of the house, or at least, it didn't look like any space that could exist within its walls. It stretched impossibly far, a cavernous expanse bathed in dim, shifting light. The air smelled wrong, thicker, heavier, like breathing through wet wool. And then there was her. She stood in the center of the room, her form flickering like an old film reel. Her face was blurred, indistinct, But her eyes, they were sharp, piercing. They locked onto mine with such intensity that I felt my knees buckle. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared, as if waiting for me to understand something. "What are you?" I croaked, my voice barely audible over the low hum vibrating through the chamber. "I'm what's left," she said finally, her words echoing unnaturally. "A fragment. A memory. A memory of what? Of her." She gestured toward the doorway, though no one stood there. "Of you." Her answer hit me like a freight train. My mind scrambled to process it, but before I could ask anything else, the scene shifted. The room dissolved into darkness, and suddenly I was standing in my childhood bedroom. Only it wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to someone else. Someone who looked exactly like me. This version of me sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by drawings. Spirals. Dozens of them, covering every surface. She glanced up, meeting my gaze without surprise. "You're not supposed to be here," she said calmly, as if seeing ghosts was an everyday occurrence. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. She smiled faintly. "I'm you. Or I was once. Before." "Before what?" Her expression darkened. "Before the house took me." And then it clicked. All those years ago, when I'd felt the shadows shift, when I'd heard the whispers, they weren't threats. They were warnings. From myself. From the version of me who hadn't escaped. But how? How had this happened? Why? As if reading my thoughts, past me spoke again. It feeds on fear. On regret. On the things we try to bury deep inside ourselves. That's why it keeps showing you the spirals. They're symbols. The patterns it uses to trap us. To keep us tied to it. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. The realization paralyzed me. The house wasn't haunted by some external force. It was haunted by me. By all the versions of me who'd failed to break free. "But why now?" I whispered. "Why am I seeing this now?" "Because it's hungry," she replied simply. "And you're next." The vision shattered, pulling me back to the basement. The woman, no, the fragment of me, was still there, watching silently. But now, I noticed something I hadn't before. Cracks running along her translucent skin, like she was breaking apart. Like the house itself was consuming her piece by piece. "You have to stop it," she said urgently. "You're the only one who can." "Ow!" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. How do I fight something that lives inside my own head? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out, pressing a cold, insubstantial hand against my forehead. Images flooded my mind, flashes of moments I've forgotten or suppressed. My father sleepwalking, my mother crying in the kitchen, the babysitter asleep on the couch while shadows crept across the walls. Each memory carried a weight, a heaviness I'd been carrying for years without realizing it. Then came the final image, a spiral etched into the wooden floorboards of the attic. At its center was a single word scrawled in jagged handwriting. Leave. When the vision ended, I stumbled backward, gasping for air. The fragment was gone, leaving only the oppressive silence of the basement. For a moment, I considered ignoring her warning, pretending none of this had happened. But deep down, I knew I couldn't stay. Not after what I'd seen. I packed a bag that night and left the house for good. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not even my parents, who called relentlessly once they realized I'd abandoned their cursed gift. Weeks passed, then months. Life moved forward, and slowly, the nightmares faded. I started to believe I'd escaped. Until last week, I woke up in my new apartment to find a spiral drawn on my bathroom mirror in black marker. Beneath it, written in shaky letters, was a message. It followed you.